Hi there, everyone. My name is David McLeod. I am your life mastery coach, and I want to welcome you to Magnificence in Motion. Today, this is episode 23, and our topic title is Embracing Self-Love. Now, many of us have heard that we need to love ourselves, but very few of us were ever actually taught how to do that, especially if we grew up in homes where love felt conditional, confusing, or even unsafe. So in this episode, I'm going to be joined by my good friend and intuitive spiritual energy healer, Kristi Borst. And we're going to have a heart-centered, grounded, and very human conversation about moving from self-criticism to genuine self-love. We're going to explore how early wounds, family patterns, and ancestral beliefs can quietly train us to be our own worst enemy, and how we can begin to unravel those patterns in a gentle, compassionate way. If the phrase self-love feels a little abstract, cheesy, or reserved for people who spend way more time on vision boards than you do, well, this conversation is for you. So I hope you enjoy it. So please join me in welcoming back Kristi Borst to the program. Kristi was a former colleague of mine on another program I do called Soul Empowerment. And now she's back today for the first time in a couple of years. And I'm really excited. So Kristi, come on back on camera. Let's get going here.
Here I am.
There you are. Hi.
So, hi. Thank
welcome.
You for inviting me to join you.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And as we were chatting a little bit before the show, I was remembering we used to do Soul Empowerment together for quite a long time. I think it was over a year and a half or 2 years or something. And yes. We did a lot of great episodes back then. It was a lot of fun.
We can remind our viewers that those are all on YouTube. So
they are. They're on my, they're also on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. You can find them there. You can find them on my YouTube channel. And there's going to be links in the recording here below, so you can go and check those out. Awesome. But anyway, Kristi, here you are. And today we're talking about self-love. And I know that this is a big topic, a challenging topic for a lot of people. And so why is it that this has been coming up for you in this time frame about this idea of self-love and moving more towards self-love?
I think for me, personally, I have probably had a little bit of a leg up on this, although I didn't have a very smooth and easy childhood. There was all kinds of dysfunction there. When I would be subject to some of those phrases, or as you say, programming that can erode our self-love, and I would kind of go off and hide in my closet and kind of be replaying some of the negative talk that was dished to me, I would hear spirit say to me, that's not the truth of who you are. So I was very blessed in that way to have that kind of guidance from a young age, that not to totally buy into some of that programming. But I work with a lot of people who do not have the ability to say, I love myself. And I feel that is a very fundamental need that we should have as adults. We can't, I'm sure you've heard the expression, you can't love anybody else until you love yourself. And again, it sounds cheesy, it sounds like rhetoric, but we're all connected as spiritual beings. So if we can't love ourselves, then we really can't love others, because of that shared thread that runs through us all.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And one of the things that I remember hearing as a child is, you're so full of yourself. If I showed any sense of, appreciating myself, I would get this from my mom. You're so full of yourself. And at the time I used to ask myself this question, well, who else would I be full of, but I got that the message, the underlying message was I was supposed to be smaller. I was supposed to be less obvious. I was supposed to be hidden. I was supposed to not necessarily be so full of myself, not necessarily be excited and exuberant about who I am. And so,
Yes.
yeah, I think, well, I certainly got that kind of message, and it was kind of subtle, but sort of subtle in a outward kind of way. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that
I think,
everybody has experienced some of that at some time in their life from some well-meaning parent or guardian or whatever who is just trying to get you so that you could fit into society more. And that's really what we're told. It's for your own good, you know? It's for your own good.
yes.
Now, you mentioned something about going into this closet and rehashing all this stuff and having spirit tell you that's not the truth of who you are. Let me ask you this. How did spirit arrive and share that information with you? How did that come to you? I mean, for some people it sounds kind of woo-woo. So I want you to kind of make it real so that other people can say, yeah, I've had that kind of experience too.
So for me, this is really my connection to what I feel is source, God, all that is, my guides, my higher self. You know, there's so many names for what I simply call spirit or source. And this is really the guidance I receive when I'm working with people as well. It's it's for some people it's a voice. For me, it's not really a voice. It's not like I hear, that's not the truth of who you are. It's more like it's a knowing that I know those words are there. Does
Right.
that make sense, David? Or
Yeah,
should
well, it
I
does
kind
to
of
me,
explain
but
that a
some
little bit
people,
more?
yeah, it certainly makes sense to me, but some people may not necessarily understand what you're talking about. And my guess is when you were a child, you didn't think so much about spirit or God or angels or guides or anything. You were just, this is what I'm trying to understand. How did this arrive for you when you were a child, when you didn't have the words to necessarily describe it?
When I'm not quite clear what you're asking, how did it arrive? It would almost be like maybe like a conversation within myself where, I would kind of be almost like a would be playing in my head of what had just happened. And then I would hear/know that phrase, that's not the truth of who you are. And I
Okay.
find now in my adult life and in my more, I guess I would say, awakened or attuned state of understanding that I'm more than just this physical being, Kristi. When those messages come to me almost like in second person, it's not me saying, I'm not that, right? It's
Hmm.
another aspect saying to me, that's not you, right? It's speaking in a second person, not in first person,
Right.
that's the divine voice, if you will.
Right. Sure. Sure. Yeah. I certainly resonate with what you're talking about. I've had similar things happen in my life for sure. And actually they happen way more often now than before because I've done so much personal growth work and I've brought myself into a closer and more loving relationship with my soul, with my true being. So now I'm more open to those conversations. Whereas when I was in my 30s and 40s, I probably would dismiss a lot of it. You know, I allowed it when I was a kid. And then I was taught, no, that's all BS. You're not supposed to kind of listen to that. I mean, you're supposed to believe in God, at least this God over here, this one that we have manufactured for you, and you're supposed to abide by all the rules of this religion, and so on and so on and so on. But you're not allowed to think for yourself. You're not allowed to, open up and allow spirit to speak to you directly, because that's
Right.
only reserved for saints, and you're definitely not a saint. You're a sinner. That's the kind of language that was used in my world. And it's no wonder that I spent so much of my time shut down. And
Yeah.
I suspect that this is true for a lot of people.
And I think, somebody listening could say, oh my gosh, they're getting off topic. And yet that connection is a amazingly powerful pathway to self-love,
Of course.
because we are connected. We can't be separated from unconditional love, and some would say love and light, because love is an energy. Love is not just just a word. It's an energy, and we're vibing in that energy. So we have to understand that, to talk about God, God is not outside ourselves. God is basically in ourselves, through ourselves, as ourselves. So we can't really even love God. I said before, you can't love somebody else if you don't love yourself. You can't love God if you don't love yourself, because
Right.
you're part of God, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, absolutely. And no, I don't think we're off topic at all. I think we're exactly on topic. I think we're like 100% over the target here. I think this is extremely important stuff, because what we're explaining here is how people get shut down. And what we're trying to do is find a pathway to opening up, to become
Yes.
not shut down. But what's the opposite of that? Completely open and abundant and full of
Right.
yourself. Full of yourself. Get full of yourself. That's what I want people to do. And how many times did you hear as a child, I certainly did, yeah, you're not supposed to love yourself because that means you're being selfish, you're being narcissistic, you're being
Self-centered.
egotistical. Yeah.
Yes.
Self-centered. Yeah. And well, that's how people relate this idea. So the notion of loving yourself, man, it goes against a lot of ingrained conditioning and training. And this is why we have to do the work underneath to understand where that came from and bring ourselves into a healthier relationship with the truth of who we really are.
I think, there's this phrase that kind of came to me as I was preparing for the show, and you've just touched upon it there, David, is we have to understand who we really are, as opposed to who we've learned is either allowable, or who we've learned it's safe to be. Because a lot of parental guidance, as you mentioned, is the parents' attempt to protect us from perhaps bad situations they've experienced themselves. So many
Right.
times, the self-limitation or limitation that we learn from our parents, it's somewhat grounded in love, but it's distorted, and the parent ends up being the one that hurts us, trying to protect us.
Right. Yep. And it's not like they're being malicious about it. I mean, certainly there are some malicious parents out there, but mostly I'd say it's being done in an innocent way to try and guide us to be good people in this organization, in the world, right? And so, yeah, it's not like they're trying to hurt us, even though maybe in the long run they end up causing some pain for us. And I'm a parent. I think you're a parent too. And I know that I have created pain for my kids. It certainly wasn't deliberate. I know that. It was based on my own ignorance of how to raise children. And so it's not that I don't necessarily apologize either. So, because when I recognize that I made a mistake, I do apologize. I go and I own it and I say, look, I was living based on this set of understandings, and apparently I was wrong, and I apologize for that. Every single one of us has the power, the capability, and if we like, the self-love to be able to take responsibility for all of our actions.
Absolutely. And I think that's important too, because it shows the child that we are human. We do make mistakes. So it gives them the message too that they can make mistakes.
Right.
And take responsibility for mistakes.
I've come to realize now that there's really no such thing as a mistake. There's just simply something that happened and which provides an opportunity to learn something new. That's how I look at it now. And for that same reason, there's no such thing as failure, Oh, you tried something and it didn't work out. Well, what did you learn from it? And what can you do now moving into your next phase or whatever that is?
I actually have a blog and a little video that I have about mistakes being mistakes. And
Right.
perhaps really the only mistake is when you purposefully, you're going to hurt somebody and you do it anyway. When you hurt someone or you make a decision and you don't really know what the outcome of it is, yes, that's a learning process and maybe something that through your own, higher self design you are meant to go through.
Right. Yeah. I think that's beautiful. And it's something that we need to remind people of, that, feel free to try things. When you're about to make a choice, consider all the possible outcomes of that choice before you actually engage it. And then decide, yeah, I think this is going to work out this way, and I really truly believe that's what's going to happen. And go ahead and make the decision and see what happens. To me, it's like, one of the ways I describe it, making a choice is like taking a rock in your hand and throwing it into the pond. Once that rock leaves your hand, it's going to have whatever impact it has. You cannot unthrow the rock. So let your choice be like the rock. Go ahead and make whatever ripples it will make. And then once you see the consequences and you can say, oh, that's not what I expected. I didn't realize that this was going to happen. Now you can make a new choice. You can't undo what you've already done, but you can make a new choice and say, I need to do something to repair that situation. And
I'd
that's
like
called.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'd like to kind of segue from that to, this is a place, these, mistakes, throwing that rock and it, hits somebody. This can be a situation where a lot of people go into self-abuse. These mistakes can be things that prevent them from feeling that self-love. And what I want to really help people see is that when we go back and we judge ourselves based on something that we did in the past, but yet here we are in this now moment, we know the consequences of what that decision had. We know now more than we knew in that moment. So it's almost as if we are judging someone else that doesn't
Right.
have the knowledge and the life experience that we now have. So we can ask ourselves, if this were someone else and they didn't know what I know now, would I be as harsh as I am being to myself? So this kind of perspective can be a good way to have self-compassion. And this is a huge part of what my healing practice is almost seeing ourselves as this Russian nesting doll with all these layers. And the deeper down we can go in and find self-love, then we can almost like work it back up towards ourselves.
Yeah, right. That's beautiful. And you spoke about, judging or criticizing or making stories up about how bad you are and all that kind of stuff. A lot of that, when we do that as children, a lot of it gets internalized and a lot of it gets hidden in the background. And it becomes what many people call shadow aspects of ourselves, because we push aside parts that maybe we think that they're bad or wrong or inappropriate, or we have some other word for them. And consequently, we don't allow them to be seen. And really what we're doing when we do that is we're kind of fragmenting ourselves. We're kind of breaking ourselves apart away from the wholeness that we really want. And what that tends to do is it tends to increase our level of self-judgment. So here's something that I think that I know you do this, and I certainly do it. It's all about recognizing that those parts of ourselves that we've hidden for whatever reason all had some beautiful gift associated with them, that if we just give them a moment in the sun, we will see that gift and be able to bring it into ourselves, into our wholeness. So this is really about loving and healing our shadows. And I think it's a
Absolutely.
crucial part of this process. What sorts of things do you do specifically to love and heal your own shadows and to encourage your clients to do the same?
So in my own experience of working with myself and working with other people, or I should even go back a step from that, is that my foundational belief of us as spirits that come into human bodies is that we come here knowing everything. We're not, we're not dumb little babies. We know we know and have not learned to disconnect from our divine intelligence, from our, our sense of being, whatever you want to call that, right? So the more we can come backward and get aspects of ourselves out of hiding, the more we reclaim some of that knowledge, some of those pathways that are hiding or that are shut down, if you will. So for me, I do a lot of trauma work, of revisiting trauma to express or exercise stuck emotions that can be in various body parts, which then prevent the human body from healing or cause physical pain, because the body is trying to say, hey, there's something here that shouldn't be here. So it's a lot of being in a resonance of a healing, safe space, allowing that miscreation that we have stored within us to come to the light. And by saying come to the light, it's just giving it a place where it can be seen from different perspectives. Because as children, we tend to think everything is our fault. And we do have a very, everything's happening around me because of what I did or who I am. And when we can revisit those situations as compassionate adults, we can kind of see, oh, wow, like I took on the pain of this situation that really wasn't mine. And then we can make a different choice about what we're holding in that shadow.
As you were speaking, one thought came to my mind. How many times did I assume it was my fault that something bad happened? Almost all the time. And yet I don't remember a single time when I assumed it was my fault that something good happened. I never took credit for the good things that happened. Now,
right,
I don't know
because that would be, then you'd be too full of yourself, right?
Exactly. So isn't that interesting that we're willing to allow ourselves to take responsibility for all the bad things that happen around us, but we're not willing to take credit for anything good that we create? I mean, that's not a universal truth, obviously. And the more work I do on myself, the more I am willing to take credit for, the good things that I create in my life. And I'm sure that's true for you too.
Yes.
So it's just an interesting observation that came to me as you were speaking. The other thing that came to me, you talked about bringing these parts out of hiding. I thought, why not make a game of it? Why not play hide and seek? Why not get your little
honestly,
flashlight out?
David, I think that's what this whole thing is. We're playing hide and seek of, who am I really, right?
Right. Yeah.
And we set up all these challenges to ourselves.
It's pretty funny when you think about it. But look, let's have fun with it. I sometimes call this soul spelunking. Going down deep into the caves of my soul, and I bring along my flashlight and I just look for little parts of myself. But hide and seek is another way of framing it. Go look for parts of yourself. Yeah.
can I go back to when you just said, oh, I just saw this thing about myself that I do.
Mm-hmm.
I have a phrase that I use a lot. Awareness equals the power of choice equals the
Right.
power to change. So when we
Exactly.
see these keystones, like I would say that's a keystone for you, or you could call it a program. Here's a program that I'm running that when I do something right, I don't give myself credit. So you can almost like watch for that now, so that when something good happens, you make sure that you celebrate it.
Yeah,
Because
right.
then as you start to change that program, it gets less and less powerful within you.
Absolutely. That's great. And listen, folks, I don't know what you're getting here. I hope you're writing notes, because there's lots of great stuff here coming up, and just keep track of everything. So, all right, we talked a little bit about healing the shadows a bit. Do you have any more that you'd like to say about that before I move on?
Um, well, I guess like if there's an analogy, um, for me, because I was a child that went and hid in the dark. So I'm very aware of the parts that can be hiding because I physically hid. Either I went in my closet or I went to the side of the house where no one could see me, just to be by myself, to almost like uh, regain my balance, I think, in a way. And
Right. Yeah.
so I think if you understand that healing the shadows, uh, if you don't give love, like what would have been what I would wanted when I was in that closet? It would have been for someone to come, open the door, tell me I'm loved, tell me, I'm sorry. So we can kind of continue to be the parent that wouldn't come to the closet, or we can be the parent that comes to the closet and
Wow, that's
gives
beautiful.
ourselves that
Yeah.
light in the darkness. So
Right.
again, it's realizing this is one of those awarenesses that really what those shadow selves or shadow hiding places need is love. And there's a
Yeah.
really powerful quote from Rumi, who was a 14th century Persian philosopher. Lots of great quotes, but the wound is the place the light enters us. So
Right.
rather than hide our wounds, rather than hide these shadow places, we can start to see this is the place where we can grow love within ourselves, more so than focusing on the light places.
Right. I love this because, well, one thing you said that really resonated for me is, as I was hiding on the side of the house or in the closet or something, what was it that I would have wanted as that child? I think you can take that very question and apply it to any shadow that you discover about yourself. Oh, I see. Here's a part of myself that I'm hiding over here. And why is it hiding? What would he or she have wanted in that moment? And you're right. I think the answer is love. That's all.
Love,
And even,
compassion, even saying, I say to like wounded child cells, I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
right.
I mean, I know as a healer and as um, a person that does this work, there was a reason I went through that, right? I understand that logically and conceptually now, but I didn't understand any of what I'm doing now when I was a child. So I think it's
Right.
really important to give ourselves that message that there's someone that's having compassion for what we went through.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very, very powerful. Just, and well, I also believe that all of my shadow parts those that I have discovered and those that I am still looking for, all of them had one thing in common. They were trying to do something. Their motivation really at the deepest level was to give or receive love, even if it was looking like maybe a dysfunctional methodology or something. I believe that, in fact, I honestly believe that virtually every person, every thought, word, action, and emotion at its deepest level is motivated by a desire to give or receive love, even if the appearance of that expression looks dysfunctional. Now, what that means is, if I can learn to give and receive love in a healthy way by bringing those shadow parts out of hiding, as you've said, and into a place where they can begin to receive some of that love that they're looking for, then we can teach those parts how to give or receive love in a healthy way. And then we can embrace the gifts that they have into our being and become more integrated, more whole, if you like.
I know what you're saying, David, and I agree, but I also feel that there is another aspect of actions, and that is a disconnect from love, or a belief in the lack of love, or a fear energy. So it's
right, which is why if you're in a lack,
yang.
if you're in a lack place, then that's where you're trying to do something to receive love. If you're in that's why I frame it the way I do. It's just, I agree with you. Fear is all about separation from love, some idea that I'm disconnected from love. That's really what it is. And even though we don't necessarily describe it that way, but I think that in the deepest sense, that's precisely what fear is. So here we are, we're talking about all these things, and I know that some people, at least in the clients that I deal with, they may have had shadows from when they were little kids, but sometimes they're still acting according to the beliefs of those shadows. They have those patterns that they're still living according to, even though the patterns no longer work the way they did when you were a child. So it becomes now a dysfunctional pattern that you're continuing to do because it's habit, nothing more. So now how do we take that pattern and flip it on its head and do something to bring it into awareness, to heal it, and to start living according to a different pattern?
Well, I think that's really one of the reasons why we have a coach or a healer, is because often we're too close to our own stories to see the story. And until we can see it, we can't really understand that there's a choice not to engage in it. Awareness equals the power of choice, equals the power to change. So a lot of times I think we can try to be more introspective, to kind of what I explain to clients is to imagine that we have a drone that we can kind of fly above our minds, and watch what we're thinking in a non-judgmental and a non-critical way. And then we can start to see some of the places where we're making choices out of fear or lack, and not out of love or a belief that the universe is conspiring for us, not against us.
Right. So we're talking about somehow flipping the script. That's kind of what I like, the way I like to frame it. And so I guess one of the things that I do and that I teach my clients is, first, you mentioned this awareness, bringing the idea, the power of choice, which in turn leads to the ability to make changes. I think that's a powerful statement and a very important one. So awareness is where everything starts. So the moment you realize that you have some kind of a thought in your mind that is basically an expression of a particular script that you happen to live by, the moment that happens, you can pause. You can say, oh, there's that thought. Where's that coming from? What is it doing? How am I believing in it? And what can I do to reframe it and move it into something that can actually help me rather than holding me back? We all have that power, like you say. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's our free will. You know, we have free will. And, you know, prior to, I would say 2010, I think I was on autopilot for a lot of my life. Just, you know, not aware of decisions I was making that were imploding my joy, my expansiveness, my connection to all that is, my soul power. And I think too that once we start to question the example came to me while you were talking, David. I was conversing with a family member over text, and she kind of said, I'm struggling with whether or not to send Christmas cards here. And so I said, well, here's some questions you can ask yourself. Does it bring me joy before, during, after? Is this something I feel obligated to do? Because there's a big thing, I think, in shadows where we're being run by these shoulds that have been kind of passed to us. There's a lot of people in our families, or, you know, I kind of see it even in, like, if you think about fraternity where they do hazing, like they didn't like it, they hated it, but yet, you know, they feel, well, that next person has to go through it because I had to go through it, right? So we've got to look at some of these things that we just assume have to be done because it happened to us, or, you know, somebody said you have to do this. When you're a child, yeah, you've got a lot of shoulds, and, you know, you don't have a lot of control, but once you're an adult, you can start to say, I'm deciding not to do this.
Right. Yeah, well, I think part of the problem is, as I was saying earlier, is when you're a child, you do get a lot of these shoulds. And I think that's where the whole conditioning starts, because you get into this mindset, oh, someone's going to tell me what I should do. And you start following that pattern, and you're expecting that to happen through, you know, because all these people in authority are the ones who are going to tell you what you're supposed to be doing and how to live your best life and this and that and the other thing. And so you kind of, over time, you end up kind of giving up your sovereignty, giving up the power of who you really are in order to satisfy someone else's idea of how you should be showing up. And that is a difficult pattern to shift, especially knowing that the moment I start changing, there are going to be people who are going to be pissed off. There are people who are not going to like the fact that I am choosing a different path, and they're going to try and, you know, shepherd me back onto the path that they want me on. That happens to all of us.
Right.
And so the
or
question
shame
is,
you, right?
right. Yeah. Well, I mean, however they decide to do it, shame is certainly one method for doing it. Some will try to manipulate you using other techniques, but one way or another, the people in your life who see you kind of breaking out from this pattern are going to try and keep you in the pattern. And it's not that they're bad or malicious people. It's just that your movement out of the pattern makes it uncomfortable for them. You know, they're going to see you liberating yourself from this pattern, and they're going to say, but I'm still stuck in it. I want you here with me. So it's a challenging situation, and we all have to deal with those, the paradox of those two energies. We have to deal with them. And the question is, are you going to be able to love yourself enough to say to the other person, I really love you and I care about you, and I am choosing this path for myself. You can choose that path if you want, or you can choose a different path. It's your choice. That this is the one I'm taking.
Yes, and I think also to realize that, we each, I believe, were chosen to come here because we had something unique as our fingerprint in our vibration of joy or being happy that we, came to add to this world. So it's almost self-sabotage when we choose to be unhappy, when we choose to surrender that uniqueness that we're here to express. So there is, yes, a balance between complying and fitting in and being a truer and truer version of ourselves. And
Yeah,
yes,
it's powerful.
people are not going to be happy about it, but
Yeah,
we're not here to make other people happy.
right. The irony of this statement is it's not possible to make other people happy. It really isn't. They might not get quite so excited or upset if you behave in a certain way, but that doesn't mean they're happy. And in any event, you cannot control someone else's emotions, like it or not. It's just simply not possible. So anytime someone says, you made me feel, it's bullshit. It's not, you didn't do anything. They felt the way they felt because of some story they have made up, their own internal triggers, and they made a decision to feel that way because of their ideas about who you're supposed to be. So
Right.
don't fall for that crap. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a something I had either heard or read um, around this time. I was kind of in really like deprogramming myself from, beliefs. I see it as like small b-e, capital L-I-E-F-S. There's lies many
Sure.
times in these beliefs that have guided us or controlled us or, determined what decisions we make. And,
Right.
there's that phrase, what other people think of you is none of your business. And the author or this video was talking about how when we look at someone else and we judge them, it's because there's something about them that we don't like or makes us uncomfortable because it's really within us, but we can't see it within ourselves yet. We can only see it in that other person.
Right.
Or there's something about that person that we aspire to, but we don't have the confidence to imagine that we can be that. So
Right.
that was like huge for me because then I could understand that when other people judge me, it's really their wounds that are speaking. And so I
Absolutely.
can have compassion for their wounds. And it's my judgment. It's my judgment I have to be concerned about because that's what's telling me about myself.
Right. Absolutely. I mean,
And that
judgment is
in
just,
itself is like a huge key to self-love.
of course, judgment is just an external representation of projection. That's all it is. Um, anytime and the judgment doesn't have to be negative either, by the way. So if I judge you to be a happy person, it's because there's a part of me inside that experiences happiness. I know what that is, and you are somehow reflecting that to me and allowing me to experience it for myself. Our judgments, our conclusions, our interpretations, all of these things are just simply projections into the outer world based on what's going on internally. That's an amazing awareness that came to me quite a few years ago. And when I heard it, I said, I wonder if anybody else understands this. So it's one of those things that I have to try and explain in my own limited vocabulary. But anyway, I wanted to get to, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. I want to make sure we cover, let's talk a little bit about how people can move away from the self-criticism, the self-judgment, being their own harshest critic, shall we say,
Okay.
towards a more open and expansive expression of self-love. How do we do that? Obviously, we can't expect just massive transition today. So let's take some baby steps.
Yeah, I love, part of the reason I wanted to do baby steps or baby leaps is because of the inner child healing work I do. And oftentimes I'll be working with a client and I'll say, can you say, because we do work with verbalizations, because our thoughts are powerful, but words have vibration, words have energy, whether we think them, but more so when we speak them. And so, we do kind of affirmations in session work. And so when I say, can you say I love myself? There are many people that say they can't. So what I suggest that they do is to look at that Russian nesting doll sense of self and go to the youngest aspect of themselves that they feel they can really truly embrace and love. And for many people, that's the baby self.
Right.
So as we can give that baby self love, unconditional love, and message that's coming to me is how, we can love a fat, chubby little baby, but if we have fat on our adult bodies, we hate ourselves. So, there's an example right there of loving ourselves in this now moment the way that we would love that fat little chubby baby.
Right.
And maybe that can help us to feed ourselves more healthfully as we would feed that baby. So, employing the baby self can give us leverage in a huge way to love ourselves in this now moment. And as we give that baby self love, we can imagine from that moment of being a baby, we had that love that we're giving ourselves right now. And then imagine pulling it up through ourselves, through the myriad aspects of ourselves, the 10-year-old, 11, 20, bring it on up. And, we work through places where we feel a block that we can't pull it forward. So for those at home, not working with someone else, this is almost like I want to say homework, but that can seem heavy. An exercise we can do just like we'd exercise our bodies.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the idea of using the nesting dolls as a way of getting down to the core of who we are, loving that core, and then pulling that love up through all the layers to the present version of who we are right now. I mean, I think that's beautiful. Another tool that I have used, and I still use it regularly, although in a slightly different way, but getting started with this idea of just saying I love you, that's a challenge. So the way I encourage people to do it is like, get yourself a little hand mirror, just something that's small, not a pain to do. You can do this in your car, you can do it in the bathroom, you can do it wherever you like. No one else has to see you doing this, but just take that mirror, look at it, and just say I love you. Pretend it's another person on the other side. That reflection is another person, and just say I love you. Now, it might be awkward, it might be uncomfortable, it might feel weird, whatever. That's all. Just do it once, put the mirror down, and go about your day. Later on, when you come back into that same room, you see that mirror, pick it up again and do it. Just look at yourself, take a breath or two. I love you. And just put it down. After a while, it will become less, you'll feel less resistance. And it becomes easier and easier over time. When you get more comfortable with this, you can do it and just look in that mirror multiple times and say, I love you. I just love the way you do this. I love the way you show up for this. I love all of these aspects of yourself. You know, pick out specific things. So in other words, what you're doing is you're expanding your ability to just say, I love myself. That's all.
Right.
In
Or
time,
to hear it, right? To hear it in your own voice.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing. After a while, you won't need the hand mirror anymore. Now you'll be able to go into the bathroom just before you start, you know, combing your hair or whatever, or shaving or whatever it is you do in front of the mirror. Just stand there and just look at as much of your body as you can see and just say, you know, I love you. I think you're an amazing being. I love you. Get used to doing that. All right, so that's your next step. After a while, you'll reach a point where you'll be able to go and stand in front of a full-length mirror, completely naked, and say, I love you. And you'll mean it. Now, that might seem like a long ways away for some people. And I know it took me a while to get comfortable doing that. But I can do it now. And even though there's some parts of my body that aren't quite as svelte as they used to be when I was in my 20s, I don't judge any of it anymore. I just say, I love you. You are an amazing being. That's all you need to do. Pardon me.
That's okay. And, you know, I want to add to this, David, that, you know, I think we've been taught to identify as our bodies. But
That's right.
a huge way to kind of love our bodies is to understand that, you know, we're not just the body, we're the breath that's breathing the body. And as spiritual beings, we've come into this, what I call, it's the earth bodysuit. You know, we can't be here without this. So we've got to love it. We've got to take care of it. We've got to, you know, myself included, make healthier choices about what we put into our bodies. And, you know, almost like starting to separate our identity as just the body, because we're so much more than that.
Absolutely. I think, yeah, this is something that I do in my whole life mastery paradigm teaching. Your identity, that's a completely separate topic, of course, but it's related to what we're talking about, because you're right. I'm not my body. I'm not the roles I play. I'm not the sex that I have. I'm not the diseases that I have. I am not, you know, any of those things. Those are simply expressions of this Davidness that happen to exist in a particular time frame based on how I'm being in the world in that moment. When I peel away, talking about layers, talking about nesting dolls, when I peel away all those layers of who I think I am, and I get down to the truth, the nugget is way, way, way more magnificent and amazing than anything I ever thought possible before. I mean, I've reached a point now where I truly recognize, and this sounds maybe lofty and a little bit maybe egotistical or something, but I truly believe that I am a divine, magnificent, unlimited, sovereign spiritual being of light and love who happens to be participating in a perfect and beautiful and temporary human experience, along with a lot of other amazing, magnificent beings. That's how I see myself now. Because, you know, all of those other things, those, you know, I'm an author. Well, no, that's just something I do. Or I'm a poet. No, that's just something I do. I'm a musician. No, that's just something I do. So, you know, you got to separate the doingness from the beingness. That's really what I think we need to be doing.
And I don't know if I have time to kind of segue that a little bit, is that, I think another way or another aspect or gateway or doorway to self-love is to realize, again, what I said just a moment ago, we're not just the body, we're the breath that breathes the body. And that breath connects us to Source, God, all that is, every other living being on this, planet here. So the breath itself can be a way to just take a pause, take a deep breath, and feel that connection.
Right.
Feel the life that we are expressing and that we are ultimately learning to make more conscious choices that bring us closer and closer to joy.
Right. Yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. And I think one thing I want people to remember is that loving yourself is not a selfish act. Loving yourself is actually the most liberating and affirming act you can do for yourself. I encourage people to really just embrace this idea of self-love and not worry too much about the stories that other people might have because you happen to love yourself. So, Kristi, before we go, I know you do a program called, what's it called? The Perspective Reboot. I think that's what it's called. You have this program that you do. And tell us a little bit about that and how people can find out about it.
So I do have, it's an evergreen podcast right now called Perspective Reboot. It's on, the streaming channels. There's also links to it from my website, which is www.healingresonance.me. And in that, I have some segments that I have guests on, going through all kinds of topics about kind of breaking out of the mindset of limitation and fear and lack to this, what you say that you now hold, that beingness as a divine and unlimited creator, co-creator here on this this reality that we're conscious of.
Right. Yeah. So healingresonance.me. I see you've posted your link in the in the chat there. And I see Wendy's just said, so grateful, made it to catch this session. Always so packed with so much energy and so much information. Greatly appreciate you both. Well, thank you, Wendy, for being here. I appreciate that. And the others who were here on the live presentation as well. Kristi, I want to thank you for being here. It's been a long time, as I said. Do you have any final words you'd like to share before I close us out?
I think, I wish I had said it in the segment where we were at, but if you have trouble saying, I love you, or I love myself, you can say, I'm learning to love myself. That's a baby step to getting there. And
I like that.
when we're learning, when we're students, we're curious.
Right.
And that's a good place to be.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Kristi, for being here. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for showing up on the live show. And for those of you who are watching the recording, thank you for being here. I just want to remind you that the recording of this and every other episode for this program is on my website at magnifessence.com. And I also want to thank you and remind you of my affirmation that I use on a regular basis. It's not really an affirmation. It's more of a mantra that I use on a daily basis just to kind of keep me in a space of loving myself and growing and expanding. And it's real simple. It's 3 sentences. It goes like this. I gratefully forgive the imperfect being I have been in the past. I gratefully accept the magnificent being I am right now. I gratefully welcome the evolved being I am becoming in each new moment. So feel free to use that and share it with your friends. It's a beautiful mantra, great way to keep yourself going. I want to thank you all for being here, and I want to wish you love, light, and blessings on your continuing journey. I'll see you next time on Magnificence in Motion. Bye-bye for now.